Today's daf we're going to be learning is Bava Batra daf Kuf Ayin Dalit. Our Circle of Friends campaign is going. Thank you so much to all those who've already joined. Anyone who hasn't yet and would like to join, feel free to join. It's basically $1 a day for the learning to help us enable us to continue our daily shiurim and expand beyond to other programs. With that, I'll remind you, we talked about it a really long time ago, but in a few weeks, we're going to have a course of Gila Fine on basically how to learn a methodology class and how to learn Agadic stories. She has a new book out, and probably after the course, you'll want to get her book if you don't already. And that's an exciting course that's coming up. And God willing, we will also have a skills class this year coming up, hopefully by February, around then. Okay. Other announcements, reminder. So I'm going to definitively say tomorrow we're going to learn Kuf Ayin Hey and the top part of Kuf Ayin Vav until the part that goes back to the Arev in the Mishnah. Okay, so when you get to the part about the Arev, in the middle, about the middle of Amud Aleph, almost the middle of Amud Aleph of Kuf Ayin Vav, finish up to there tomorrow. We'll finish it together in class, but if for some reason you don't listen to my class and you get to the Siyum, you did it on your own, make sure to get up to there before the Siyum. And then there's no class on Wednesday morning. And Wednesday, the Siyum will be on Zoom, Wednesday evening, Israel time, wherever that is by you. Okay, we're looking forward. We have a good program lined up with Brooke Pollock and with Alana Storch. Okay. I think that's it for announcements. Oh, and just a reminder that Alana's Shiur Din and Daf is up about an overview, really a bird's eye overview of all of Bava Batra, especially it was a very long Masechet, so you might not remember everything from the beginning. It's a good review with obviously a bit of an in-depth perspective on that. And Shuli Mishkin's post went up last week that I forgot to mention, and it talks about Israel and Babylonia and also some things that relate to even today. We'll see a Shalchu Mitam about all those Nechute, the people who went back and forth. So a good historical perspective on that. Okay, let's get started. What we did at the end of yesterday's daf, we're learning about a guarantor of a loan. And we said that we kind of ended with it. There's two different types. There's a kablan and there's an arev, which we didn't exactly get into, but we're going to start with that today and understand the differences. And when we ended up concluding, we reread the Mishnah after having this problem with something Rabbi Yochanan said, which seemed to match Tanakama and not Rashbag. I'm sorry, it seemed to match Rashbag, Rav Shimon Gamliel's opinion, not Tanakama's opinion, which seems strange. To which we said, actually, Rav Shimon Gamliel and Tanakama agree on that, which was what? That even if you say in the agreement of the loan, the creditor is going to collect from the guarantor if they want, they still can't go to the guarantor first. Everyone agrees with that, even though it looked like it was a machloket in the Mishnah. They can't go to the guarantor first without checking in. First, will the borrower, him or herself, pay back that loan? Then we said the machloket between them is actually about a kablan. A kablan, we're going to see it soon, is where the guarantor takes on more responsibility than a regular guarantor and sort of makes the deal somewhat more directly between the guarantor and the creditor. And in that case is the machloket between Rashbag and the rabbis. Rashbag still thinks you still can't go to the love first. And the rabbis think that you can. And that's the machloket between them, and that's where we ended. Okay, that if again, you not only have to go there first, but if there's property, right? And when we can end with starting the beginning of our daf, Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer, im yesh nechasim lalove, as long as the love has property that you can collect from, then echad zeh v'echad zeh lo yipara mehen. Then you cannot go. It doesn't matter what condition was stipulated from the beginning. Even in a kablan case where the guarantor took on more responsibility, still you can't go to the guarantor until you've take whatever property the lova has. Only then can you go to the guarantor. And then comes this famous line, which we've seen a bunch of times. Amar Rabba bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol makom sheshana rashbag b'mishnatenu, halacha k'moto chutz mi'arev v'tzaidan v'raya achrona. Any place where Rashbag appears in our Mishnah, we actually hold like him other than three cases. We're in one of the three famous cases, Arev. We don't hold like Rashbag in the Arev case, which basically means that if it's a kab, okay, now this is our rereading of the Mishnah. If it's an Arev, so then you have to go to the Love. But if it's a kablan, you can go straight to the Arev if you want. We actually hold that way. What are the other two cases? So for this, I brought you study guide. I put them in the study guide because, these keep coming up and I feel like it's our responsibility to remember them. Let me open it. So in the study guide, I brought you the cases. One is in Gittin, Perek Zayin Mishnah Hey. Basically, this is a husband who gives a get upon condition that the wife give him a certain amount of money. And comes Rashbag and he says, this is you get on the condition that you give me my cloak. And then, so basically that means it's not going to be a get unless she gives him the cloak back. But avda itztalito, she loses the cloak. She can't find it. According to Rashbag, now Tanakama doesn't agree with this. According to Rashbag, the rabbis said in this case she can pay the value of it. Okay, it was just a monetary thing. She doesn't actually have to fulfill the t'nai, as it says in the words "shetinili itztiliti." As long as she returns the money, it's sufficient. But the rabbis say no. If that was a condition to the get, that she has to return the cloak. If she can't return the cloak, tough luck. Okay, interesting. Next case, and you're going to see a similarity between the Gittin case and the case in Sanhedrin. I'm not sure if our Mishnah fits into the category there. You can think about it, but at first glance, for sure, these two are very similar because Rashbag kind of, and I'll already give you the idea here, and we'll see it in the next case. Rashbag kind of feels bad for someone who gets stuck in a bad situation. She lost the itzili, what she's supposed to do. So, of course, we're going to help her out. Likewise, in this other case, this is a case where somebody can bring a proof. After there's a judgment, they can bring a proof and say, wait, this evidence wasn't in admission before, and now it is, and, please open up the case again. And we can change the law after that. But they start to ask, what if there's the judges put a limit on it? And then Rashbag has an opinion. I'm not going to go to that because that's not the one. That's why it's called Raya Achrona, because it's the last case where Rashbag disagrees. What if Amrulo have edim? So in court, they say to the person, bring witnesses. And the person said, look, Eli edim, I have no witnesses. Or have raya, bring a proof. And the person says, I have no proof. And then all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden, one day, he brings witnesses into the court. We can't trust that person because that person said, I have no witnesses, I have no proof. And then all of a sudden, what? They bring witnesses, they bring proof. It's obviously a concern that it's a forgery. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, what do you mean? Maya says lo haya yodeh sheyesh lo edim u'matzah edim. Lo haya yodeh sheyesh lo raya u'matzah raya. Rashbag says, what? We're going to penalize someone because they didn't realize they had witnesses and all of a sudden found witnesses? It's very possible they're not lying. It's unfair to penalize someone just because they said they didn't have witnesses. Maybe they had no idea. So in both those cases, Rashbag sees someone who's in a desperate situation almost, right? This woman wants to get her get, but she loses the itztalit. Or somebody didn't realize they have witnesses and all of a sudden does. Well, we're not going to rule against them. So Rashbag is on the side of helping that person for whatever reason. You would think that we would hold like Rashbag, but no, the rabbis don't agree. The rabbis say, no, that was the condition. You have to fulfill the condition. This person said no. Well, too late. Okay. And so these are cases we don't hold like Rashbag. Is this similar to our case? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure this would fit into the same kind of criteria, but you can try to think about if you can come up with something that connects all three cases. Okay. Amar Rav Huna. Now we're going to have to figure out what's the difference between an Areivut and kablanut. Okay. They're both types of guarantors. What's the difference? And how do we know which one the person was? Amar Rav Huna, halvehu v'ani arev, halvehu v'ani porea, halvehu v'ani chayav, halvehu v'ani noten, kulam lashon arvut. Loan him money, I'll be the arev. Loan her money, I will pay back. Loan him money, and I will be obligated. Loan her money, and I will give. Okay, whatever language, there's a loan the person money. The guarantor says, you loan the person the money, and I will take care of it. Whatever language, right? Noten, porea, whatever it is, I'll take care of it. That's all Areivut. That's a regular guarantor because what do we have here? We have a loan between two people, and the Arev is saying, I'll be responsible if there's an issue. But if the language is Tein lo v'ani kablan, Tein lo v'ani porea, Tein lo v'ani chayav, Tein lo v'ani noten, here we didn't change the last words the person said. The guarantor said, I will give it, I will pay it back, I will any of those languages. But we changed the first word, not loan them money. Loan them money creates this relationship. Even though it's the guarantor speaking, it creates a relationship between the creditor and the borrower. Creditor, you should loan money to the borrower, and the borrower will be your borrower, and I will guarantee the loan. But if you say, give the borrower, and I will give you, or give the borrower and I will pay you back, it sounds like it's a deal between the guarantor and the creditor. And there's no malva love relationship, even though in the end the same thing is happening. Money's going from the creditor to the borrower, but it's more like the guarantor saying, give that person something and I will give you back. And then it's more directly between the guarantor and the creditor. And therefore, that's kablanut. And in that case, again, we make the kablan potentially more responsible if, according to the rabbis, which we hold like, the creditor can go straight to the guarantor in that case, as long as, right, it was clear from the agreement that that was the case. So all of those are lashon kablanut. Now they start asking questions. What if it's some combination of words? Okay, usually halvehu connects with the arev, and also the word arev connects with the arev, and tain and kablanut goes with kablanut. What if you mix and match the words? And here we're going to get into, and you can follow in the chart because it's a little confusing. So I made a chart to follow all the different possibilities here. So we're going to go through ibayelu. So now they asked, halvehu vahani kablan. Okay, lemi, and I'm a kablan. That's the second one here. There's a loan language, which would be Areivut, but the end language is kablanut. Or tainlo vani arev. The beginning language, tainlo, is kablanut, but ani arev is Areivut. So Amar Rabbi Mai, what's the halacha? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, lashon arvut arvut, lashon kablanut kablanut. He says very clearly, if you use the word kablan, then it's kablanut. It doesn't matter if you said loan him the money or loan her the money, right? That's all not important. It's the word kablan is in the commitment. That's kablanut. If the word Areivut appears, it's Areivut. So haveu vani kablan is obviously kablanut. Tenlo vani arev is Areivut. Rav Chisda Amal, no, kulan lashon kablanutin. He goes to the extreme. He says any of these languages is kablanut as long as, right, the only way it's going to be Areivut is bar mehalvehu vani arev. If you use lend money to this person as a loan, and I will be your guarantor, Areivut, those two are going to be Areivut, but those two languages, the combination of halva and Areivut is Areivut. Anything else, halva'ani kablan, halva'ani aten, any of that, ten lo vani arev, anything, even though it says arevut, it doesn't matter. You use ten lo, already that's kablanut. And Rav is going to be the other extreme. Rav amar kulan lashon arevutin. Everything's actually, you're an arev. You're not a kablan at all, unless you say, bar mi ten lo vani noten, which the Rashbam says, ten lo vani noten or ten lo vani kablan. Okay, if you say, give to that person and I will give to you, or give to that person and I will be a kablan, then it's kablanut. Anything short of that, tainlo and I'm an arev, or halveyu and I'm a kablan, none of that is kablanut. So we have two extremes here and we have like a middle position, which was the first. Now we have a maimer who comes and says, it's a little bit different than he's referring to something a little different. Amalei mar bar maimer le Rav Ashi, the son of a maimer says to Rav Ashi, hachi amar abba, this is what my father said. Tain lo va'ani noten, ein lamalve ala love klum. He goes almost to an extreme and he says, forget about you can go to the kablan if you want instead of the love, but he says, if the kablan says, give her and I will return you the money, there's no lova in the picture. The lova gets the money, but you can't actually go to the lova at all, okay? Because this didn't involve the lova. The lova took no responsibility here. It was all the responsibility was on the kablan, and you can't even go to the lova at all. It's a little bit crazy. And in fact, the Gemara says that's a little crazy. Belohi, this is not true though. Lo mifter, so they go against Ameimar and say, Lo mifter lova mine demalve ad shisavi item bayad. There's two scenarios here. The kablan says, give to her and I will pay you back the money. So it's a conversation between the kablan and the creditor. If the creditor gives the money to the borrower, then the borrower is still responsible to pay potentially, right? And again, you can go to the kablan or you can go to the borrower. However, if the kablan says, give the borrower and I will be responsible, I will give it back to you, and the malve, the creditor, gave the money to the kablan, and the kablan is the one who gave the money to the love, then we remove the love from the picture. Because it really was, the fact that the creditor, the fact that the kablan decided, the guarantor decided to give the money to the love was really, right, the kablan could have taken the money for him or herself. So therefore, only if, that's what it says here in the words, ad she'isav yitem bayat. Unless the love got it directly from the malve, then, right, then the lova is going to be responsible. But if not, right, if the lova didn't get it directly from the malve, but got it through, if the guarantor did the moving of the money, guarantor got the money and then passed it on, then the guarantor is fully responsible and you can't even demand any money from the lova. Okay, we started with, can you demand money from the guarantor? And we ended up with, there could even be a case where you can't even take the money from the borrower. Now we're going to have a case, and this is not a case of a guarantor, but we're going to compare it to laws of guarantor. There was a judge who a malva came before, creditor, and the judge said, listen, you can go straight to the land of the borrower and seize the property. To which Salke Rav Chanin bereid Rav Yeva. Rav Chanin, the son of Rav Yeva, came along and kicked him out. Unclear who he kicked out of what. Either kicked out the malvet when he was trying to take the money from the lovet, okay, the land, seize the property, or kicked out the judge for being a judge and said, you're a terrible judge. You can't do this. Now, why can't you do that? Right? We've learned many times the land of the lovet is subjugated to the loan. So why can't you just go straight to the land of the lovet? Well, I'm a Rava. Rava's response to this situation, so the judge ruled this, and Rav Chanin came and said, you're totally wrong. Comes Rav and he says, Man chakim leme'aba ki ha-milta ilav Rav Chanin bereid Rav Yiva. He says basically, wow, really smart guy, this Rav Chanin. It was really good what he did. Who could be as smart as him to do this kind of a thing? Why is he right? Kasaval, he must hold. Nirse debar inish, or we hold in general, what is your land if not a guarantee for a loan, right? We always call it, right? The guarantee. It's the land was given under, right? The loan was given with a guarantee. The land is liened to the property. What does it mean? It's liened. It acts as a guarantor. If it acts as a guarantor, what do we learn? Utznan, and what does our Mishnah say? Lo yipara min ha'arev. And how did we learn lo yipara min ha'arev? Lo yitba arev tchila. You can't go directly to the arev. That means you can't go directly to the land because the land is like a guarantee for the property. And you can't go there directly. You have to first ask the loved, do you have the money to pay back? If the loved takes out cash, you can't go seize their property. So you can't, this judge that basically sent the malva straight to seize the property was wrong. Now we have a case that we're going to deal with for the next, let's say, half an amud of orphans. Let's talk about orphans. A father dies, leaves a loan outstanding. So that loan can be seized from the property of the father, even when the Yitomim are young, because it's a milveh, exactly as we just said. It's a milveh b'shtar, right? If you have a loan in it written in the document, actually this is going to appear in the next Mishnah, even though we've learned it a million times already, it can be collected from lien property, as opposed to a loan that's not written down, right? If it was just an oral loan, it cannot be seized from lien property. So orphans are too young, assuming we're talking about young orphans. They're not of age yet. We can't collect a loan from them, but we can collect it from the property of the father, because the property of the father is as if it's already lien to the property, or it is already lien to the loan, and therefore can be collected. But if it's a milva al peh, for example, which is not what we're talking about, but hold off because we'll get there. If it's an oral loan, you can't collect that from the orphans until they're old enough, until they're of age. Then they're obligated to return a loan, but not before. So what happened in this case? There was a guarantor for the loan, an arev. He was an arev for the yatme, okay? Obviously, he was an arev for the loan for the father, which now makes him an arev for the orphans. And what did he do? He paid the loan back already, before they went to the orphans. Now, had they gone to the orphans, they would have seized property of the orphans and taken the loan. So this Arev decided to do a nice thing, pay back the loan for them. But now, what would happen if you were a guarantor for someone's loan and you paid? What would you next do? You try to ultimately get the money back from the person because it's not fair. You should have to pay. So he went to the orphans and said, "Okay, now pay me." Now let's think about it. What's their responsibility toward him? Well, it's an oral agreement. They don't have a written agreement, right? It's not a milval pet, milval bishtar. It's a milval pet. So they can't collect it. The guarantor can't collect the loan from the orphans from lien property. So this Arev goes to the children. So we're going to have two opinions as to why, for sure, they don't have to pay this person back. They may have to pay them when they get older, but right now, when they're young, they don't have to pay him back. So Amar Papa, Priat Ba'achov mitzvah. They have someone who they owe money to, which is now the guarantor. It's a mitzvah to pay back someone. Okay, there's a whole debate. Mitzvah, where's there a mitzvah? Is it in Tariag mitzvot? Is it in 613? Is it Doraita? Is it Rabbanan? Big machloket. We're going to put that aside though. V'yat melad b'nei me'aba mitzvah ninu. And they're too young. They're not chayiv in mitzvah. So whether it's a mitzvah Rabbanan, whether it's a mitzvah Doraita, they're not obligated in mitzvah. So they don't have to return this money till they get older. So this Arev did a nice thing, pay back the money, but he's not going to get his money back for a long time. Rav Huna bereid Rav Yoshua Amar, Emar Tzrare Atbase. The issue is not the mitzvah and that they're not obligated to mitzvah. There's a different problem, which is these are young children. They have no idea, like they haven't looked through their father's books. They don't know what the story is. Maybe the father already gave some money as collateral. He put aside bundles of money for this and maybe even gave it to we don't know. Maybe part of it was paid back. Maybe all of it was paid back, right? I mean, probably all wasn't paid back, but it could be there was money set aside, okay? And money given, to this, this means basically what was the Arev doing, paying back the loan on behalf of these orphans without checking into the situation? The orphans could say, maybe our father paid money. We don't know. So here the question is, can the Arev never demand the money from them? Or is it more that wait till they get older and they can look into things better and get a better sense of what was happening and make a better claim? So right now, we're going to basically say that, right, no matter what, they don't have to pay the Arev, either for the reason Rav Papa gave, Priyat Ba'achov mitzvah, and they don't have to do mitzvah yet, or because maybe the father already set money aside. By the way, we met this Sharei Atbase, if you remember, in the case of a ketuba. So because a ketuba is a Tanai Beitin, that the husband always has to pay a ketuba, right now, doesn't always if she dies first, but likely he's going to have to pay the ketuba at some point, either if he dies or if he divorces her. Often they even put money aside, and even the woman sometimes takes that money in her lifetime, and that's like a whole problem. When she goes to collect from the orphans, she has to take an oath, and then the rabbis didn't want to make her take oaths because people were lying. Anyway, there's a whole thing there about Shrari Atpase. It's the same words used there. So now the Gemara says, "My benayu." What's the difference, the halacha, whether you go, and there's a chart on the sheet of this as well. What's the difference whether you say Shrari Atpase or you'd say it's a mitzvah? Ikbenayu keshachayev modeh. Inami dishamtuhu meit b'shamte. Now, both of these are the same type of nafkamina, but different cases. But in a case where each of them is going to say, and we'll go through each case, in a case where it's clear the father didn't pay anything back yet, then Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua would agree that the Arev can demand the money from the orphans. Whereas Rav Papa is still going to say it's a mitzvah, and right, Rav Huna's Bereid Rav Yoshua is only concerned that maybe the father paid some money back. If the father, Chayav Modeh, if the father on his deathbed says, I owe this money in its entirety, or Shamtuhu, it would have to be, by the way, on his deathbed. Otherwise, it could be he said it 2 months before and then in the meantime paid the money back. So it would have to be on his deathbed, said, I never paid this back. Or Shamtuhu, which is they put him in excommunication. What would that mean? Well, when they went to let's say the loan came up before the father died, and they went to the father and said, pay this loan back. And the father said no. They would put the father in nidoy. They would excommunicate him until he paid back the loan. And if he died while he was still excommunicated, it would be very clear that the father didn't give any money. So both those cases, Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua would say the orphans then would have to pay back the Arev right now. And according to Rav Papa, no, they wouldn't. Okay. And again, this is at least the way the Rashbam understands this sugya. There's different ways to understand it. The Rashbam puts it into these terms of milva al peh, milva b'shtar. In other words, before the Arev paid it back, remember it was a document. Because it was in a document, they could have seized property of the fathers, the creditor. But once the Arev paid it back, their obligation to the Arev is only a milva al peh. It's only an oral agreement, and that you can't take from the orphans again, especially if you go with Rav Papa, mitzvah to pay back. It's just a mitzvah to pay back the loan, right? It's not that the property is liened, and that we can only obligate them once they become of age. Now the Gemara says, Hilchatak to Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua. Okay, oh, sorry, Shalchu mitam. They sent from Israel. Shamtuhu v'meit b'shamte. That's apropos what I was talking about, Shuli's article in Flashback, that lots of times they were sending halachot from Israel to Babylonia. If Shamtuhu meit b'shamte, if he was excommunicated and died in excommunication, Hilchatak Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua. Then we paskin like Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua. Again, you don't need to say we paskin like Rav Huna in a regular case because both of them hold the same thing. We can't force the Arev to, right? We can't force the orphans to pay the guarantor. But in a case where there is a nafkamina, where there is a practical difference, like Shamtu v'meit, we actually hold by Rav Huna, and we would make the orphans pay the guarantor. Now, besides saying we side more with Rav Huna Bered Rav Yeshua, also they're going to bring a difficulty on Rav Papa. Meitive. Arev shayash tarchov yotze mitachat yado eno goveh. An Arev that had a document, what happened here? The Arev paid the money back. What happens when you pay the money back? The person who pays the money takes the shtar and usually tears it up. Well, in this case, the Arev didn't tear up the shtar. The Arev got the shtar because the Arev paid it back, the IOU, the promissory note, and now takes it to the orphans and says, on the basis of this, I paid it back. Now you pay me. So what did we learn? Eino goveh. He can't collect from them, and that's because either Rav Papa or Rav Huna Bered Rav Yeshua, right? Either which way, he can't collect from them, because even though he has a shtar, it's not that their money is liened to this shtar. It's not that the Arev in that shtar has the rights to collect the money. It was just the Arev was saying, I got this shtar because, right, but the shtar is really between the borrower and the father of the orphans and the creditor, not between the Arev and them. So you can't collect. However, in ketuba, if it's written in that document, hit kabalti mimcha, that the creditor signed, I got the money from the guarantor, and that was written into the shtar, goveh. Then it gives this creditor the power, the Arev, the guarantor, the power to collect the loan. So Bishlam ala Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua mishkachalak kishchayev modeh. How could you possibly have a case where the Arev pays back the money? Well, the only way you could really understand it is according to Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua, who said it must be, because otherwise how can you explain it, kishchayev modeh. It must be, it was a case, it would have to, now it's a little weird to explain the Braita this way, because that's not the distinction the Braita made. But when they said, if the creditor wrote, I got this money from you, and the father had admitted to the children before he died that he owed the money in full, then you could collect it. But Elul Rav Papa, who basically says there's no way the creditor can ever, there's no way the Arev, the guarantor, could ever collect from the orphans, because it's just a mitzvah for them to return the money, because it's an oral loan, and therefore he can't collect from them. Kasha, how would you ever explain this? To which they say, no. Shane hatam lahaki tarach v'katav lehit kabalti. And what the Rashbam explains is because the person wrote, the creditor wrote hit kabalti, right? This was collected from the Arev, and it's written into the original promissory note. That actually gives the guarantor. It's like the guarantor has a shtar that says they owe him the money, and therefore he can collect that money from the orphans. So even Rav Papa, there is a way to explain how that case would work, and that's why. Okay, and even it's a better proof than Rav Huna, the proof we gave for Rav Huna, because Rav Huna's proof is really not written in the words of, it never said anywhere it was Chayev Modeh, and that would be a weird way to explain it. This is a better way. It's his point. Why is his Kabalti any different? Because now it's in the shtar, and that gives the guarantor the power of having a shtar in hand. Okay, so it turns it into a milva b'shtar. Another case. Hu arva de'oved kochavim. There was an Arev who guaranteed a Jew's loan from a Gentile. And again, it was the father. The father died. Father had borrowed money from the Gentile. The Arev went directly to the Gentile, paid the money back. Now the question is, could the Arev get the money from the children? Now we already said in general, no. because of either tzarei atpase or because it's a mitzvah and they don't have to do the mitzvah yet. So Amalei Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi, Hachi Amar Avimi meHagronya Mishmei de Rava. So Rav Mordechai says to Rav Ashi, this is what Avimi from Hagronya said in the name of Rava. Afilu lamanda Amar Chashinan Litzrari. If we go by Rav Huna, who we already said we kind of go by, and who says we're worried that maybe some of the money was paid back already and there was some sort of collateral and they'd given money already to the creditor, the father, and the kids don't know, and that's why we're not going to make the kids pay. Hanimile Yisrael. That concern is only true for a Jew. Okay, we're going to see why in a minute, why we would make a distinction. But if the creditor, if the creditor is a Gentile, this goes back to something we learned yesterday, Kevan de Batar Arva Azil, who do the creditors collect from when they're Gentiles? They go straight, in the Dina Parsi, we learned the Persian courts, they would go straight to the guarantor. So why would the borrower ever pay money and give a collateral if they know that they're anyway not going to have to return the loan, but they're going to go straight to the guarantor? So therefore, lo chashina l'tzrari, we won't worry that maybe tzrari, in which case the Areivut could actually collect the money from the borrower here, because there's no concern, if you hold like Rav Huna, Rav Yoshua, there's no concern of tzrari. To which Amar Le, okay, Rav Mordechai said this to Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi comes back and says, no, you have it all wrong. You're right about the fact that we're not chosheshim, you're right about the fact that the law is different and they go straight to the Arev. But you're wrong about the fact that there's no concern for tzrari. There's even more concern for tzrari here. Let's see why. Adraba, it's the opposite of what you said. Afilu lamanda amar lo chashinan l'tzrari. Even if normally you're not worried about that, Hanimila Yisrael, that's only with a Jew who's the creditor. Aval of de kochavim kevan de dineu batar arve azle. In the Gentile courts, they're going to go straight and collect it from the guarantor. Then ilav de atpaseit tzrari miikara lo ava mekabele. Who would ever guarantee that kind of a loan? The only way that anyone will guarantee the kind of a loan where they know they're going to come straight to them to get the money, the creditor is going to go straight to the guarantor. The only way the guarantor will guarantee this loan is knowing that you already put aside some money. You already maybe even gave some of it to the creditor. Now, it's a little bit weird. Why am I borrowing money if I'm going to have to give back some of the money from the beginning? But I think what they're saying is you must have given some sort of collateral, like a watch or something that was worth money, and that's already in the hands of the creditor. So there's more of a chance because no one else would guarantee a loan where they know that you're going to go straight to the guarantor unless you actually gave something of meaning to the. So imagine you wanted cash, so you gave some object of yours as a guarantee for that loan. Otherwise, no one else would guarantee the loan for you unless you did that. So there's more of a concern for tzrari than in a regular case. So there are two approaches here, all based on the same logic. It's all because the Persian law is different. The question is, how does that affect the concern for tzrari? Okay, now we're going to move on to ketuba. If you remember, what did Rashbag say? If there's someone who guarantees a ketuba and the couple has no money, and therefore we learned already we can go straight to the guarantor. Therefore, there's a concern that a husband and a wife might do a knunya, they might conspire against someone else, against the guarantor, to get themselves some money. So what will he do? He'll divorce her. She'll demand her ketuba. The guy has no money, the husband, so they'll go to the guarantor. The guarantor will give the money, and then they'll get remarried again. And therefore, Rashbag says, in a situation like this, the court must insist that when he divorces her, he takes a vow never to benefit from her so that they can't do this and he can't remarry her. That will preclude the remarriage. Okay, we get to a really fascinating story now. Moshe Bar Atzrei, that was his name, Arva de Ketuba de Kaltehava. He was in Areivut for the ketuba of his daughter-in-law. That basically means when his son wrote the ketuba, the father said, I'll guarantee your ketuba. Rav Huna Berei, Rav Huna was his son, Rav Huna the son of Moshe, was at Sorva me Rabbanit Hava. He was a Talmid Chacham, Udechika le Milta, and he was very poor. Amar Abaye. Now, remember Abaye. Abaye had a miserable childhood, right? His father died miserable, but difficult, and he talks about it. He had a struggle in general in life. His father died when his mother got pregnant. His mother died in childbirth. He's brought up by Rabba, who himself was not a wealthy man, struggled financially, and talks a lot in the Gemara. We'll see in the story about how rough it is being poor. And you're going to see that he's going to try to help out this poor man because he understands and identifies with his struggle. So Abaye says, Leka denezel denas be'etza lerafuna deniger shelidebitu v'tezel v'tigde tuba me'avua v'hadra nehadra. Is there not anybody who's going to give advice to this man? Why doesn't he divorce his wife, demand the ketuba, right? She'll demand the ketuba. He has no money. They'll get it from the father, and then, right, she'll get it from her father-in-law, and then he'll go remarry her. Okay, sounds like a good plan, except the Mishnah says, no way, no how can you do this? So Rava says, I'm really Rava says, Tabai, what are you, crazy? And the Mishnah says, this will never work because as soon as he goes to divorce her, the court will insist that he take a vow not to benefit from her. So there's no way you could do this. Forget about that. It's wrong, but it won't work. Amar le Abai. Abai says, what are you worried about? Atu called him Megarish, but Beit Din Megarish. Not everybody gets divorced in the court. Let him divorce her privately. Grab two witnesses, right? Get a scribe, write a get, have two witnesses sign, have two witnesses witness the divorce, and do it. And there's no court there to say you have to be Madir Hana'ah. And then with that, she could go to the court, get her ketuba, and then he can remarry her. Okay, so it sounds like it is a solution, which we're going to question later. But what do you mean? How could he possibly say this? Isn't this deceptive? But we'll get back to that. In any case, funny ending to the story. L'Sophie Gali Milted the Cohen, who turned out the guy was Cohen. It wasn't a good solution because Kohanim are never allowed to remarry their divorced wives. They can't marry a divorcee, not even their own divorcee. So that's not a solution for this person, to which Abai responds and says, Amr Abai, Hainu da Amre Inashe. This is what people say, Batar Anya Azlan Yuta. After poverty, there's more poverty. In other words, people who are poor struggle even more than the average person. And I feel really bad for this guy because now that he's a Kohen, it messed up his opportunity to actually get some money. Now the Gemara asks, that's the end of the story. Now the Gemara asks, Umi amar Abaye hachi? How can Abaye possibly say this? And forget about it. It seems deceptive, but Abaye himself says in another place, Hamar Abaye, Ezehu Rasha Arom. Okay, the Mishnah in Sota talks about a Rasha Arom, and Abaye explains what is a Rasha Arom, okay, like a deceptive, deceitful person. Zeh hamatzi etza, we learned this earlier in the Masechet, limkor b'nechasim kerashbag. If you remember, Rashbag has this thing where he says, if someone says on their deathbed, I'm giving my possessions to so-and-so and after them to so-and-so, which basically means the middle person there is not going to pass on an inheritance to their children. When they die, it'll go to the next person. However, if they happen to sell the property, which they shouldn't, but if they do and get the money for it, then the money goes to the children and, where they can use the money and the land doesn't go to the next person. So basically, Abaye says, you shouldn't do this. And if someone, but if you do it, it's effective. And if someone teaches that to somebody to do, that's deceptive. Like, don't teach people that you can use the halacha to get, in a way that it's not appropriate. So how could he possibly suggest this? To which the Gemara answers, Bino shane v'tzur v'merabanan shane. It's his own son. And perhaps if you think about Abaye, how he had no father, could be he really felt like this father is not doing what a father's supposed to do. Like this guy's like me, who had no father really. Why is his father not helping him financially? And it's just a way to kind of get the father to help his children financially who are really struggling. And if that's not enough, which maybe it's not, he's also a Talmid Chacham. Talmidei Chachamim need money so they can learn. Also Abaye's situation where he understood the predicament of a Talmid Chacham who's trying to learn but can't because he can't make a living. So all the more so, you have to help his Talmid Chacham to enable him to be able to learn Torah, which is obviously a very dangerous statement here. What kind of deception is allowed for Talmidei Chachamim in order to allow them to learn Torah? They can be deceitful. But again, I think because it's a father, I think they don't view this as real deceit. It's just a way of getting the father to help out the children. Anyway, very interesting story. But now they're going to ask another question on this story. V'ha'areivut. Wait, the father was an arev to the ketuba. Well, kaimalam, we learned, and now we're going to have to understand this. It'll take us a few minutes to get through it, but arev de ketuba lo mishtabed. Even though an arev is generally obligated to pay if the borrower has no money, but not in a ketuba case. Okay, why is this? We're going to have to see. So they answer kablan hava. He was a kablan. He wasn't an arev. If he was just an arev, it wouldn't work. He must have been a kablan, which remember is a much stronger type of guarantor. So hanicha, that only works. Lemanda amar kablan diktuba afagav deletli nechse lebal mishtabed shapir. That only works if you hold, okay, now we're going to differentiate. Number one, we're going to say, right, we're already sort of siding on ketuba. Areivut doesn't really work in general. And then we're going to differentiate between, it might work more. Now it sounds a little counterintuitive, but it might work more if there's money, if the husband had money to begin with. The husband had money, then when the Arev took responsibility, the Arev did take more responsibility. If the husband didn't have money, then when the Arev agreed to be Arev to the loan, to the ketuba, they didn't really mean it. They were just doing it to enable this guy to get married. Okay, because they realized there's no way the guy could get married if he can't commit, so I'll just commit, but I don't really mean it. Okay, if they didn't have money, person, excuse me, if they didn't have money, the person wasn't going to really commit because they don't really want to have to pay the ketuba. They're just doing it. We're going to see later. The end line here is that it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to help someone get married. So because of that, the person signed, but they didn't really mean it. And they less likely meant it if the person actually had no money because they don't really want to commit the money for the ketuba. They're not going to put up the money. So now the kablanut splits up. So if you hold the kablan of a ketuba, even though if you're going to say, even though the person didn't have any money, which would make you less likely to have committed, however, since you said kablanut, you must have meant it seriously, then we can explain it. Shapir makes sense. The father was a kablan of a ketuba and had this commitment. But lemanda amar, but to those who say but those who say no, the kablan is only agreeing when the guy has money. But this case, the guy had no money, so obviously the father wasn't committing. If you hold that, then how could the father even be obligated? What can you explain? So maybe this Rav Huna had money at the time of the wedding, and that's why the father took upon the kablanut, but later on lost his money. That's possible. Or or again, because it's with a father-son relationship, a random person wouldn't commit kablanut even though they said kablanut, they wouldn't really mean it if it was a ketuba, if the person had no money. But a father to his son maybe would, even though we see this father wasn't so great to his son, but maybe at the time he really did commit wholeheartedly. Now, what's this machloket now? That was just how to explain that case. How could he have been an Arev? He actually wasn't an Arev because there's no such thing as Areivut for ketuba, where they really actually commit. Kablanut, there's a debate about, and depending on the case. So now they're going to say to Itmar, what's this whole machlok? Arev de ketuba divrei hakol mishtabed. Everybody agrees that an Arev on a ketuba does not commit himself. However, kablan de baal chov divrei hakol mishtabed. A kablan for a loan, everyone agrees, of course, is committing. What's the in between? Kablan de ketuba v'arev de baal chov pligi. So there's a machloket about the two middle cases. We're back to like we started today. Kablan, arev, middle cases. So the two middle cases, there's a debate. Pligi mar saval So one opinion is it really all depends. If the loba had money, or the ketuba person had money in the kablan case, kablan of a ketuba, if the husband had money, then mishtabed. Lo mishtabed. But if the person didn't have money, then no way did that person agree. And mar savar bein leitle mishtabed. And the other opinion says no, either which way they are mishabed. Okay, and those were the two opinions we saw before. And hilchata, what's the halacha? Arev bein itle ubein leitle mishtabed. Bar me'arev de ketuba. In Arev, actually doesn't matter whether the person had money or didn't. If someone guarantees a loan, yes, that's a commitment. We take that. No matter what, whether the person had money, didn't have money, you guaranteed it. We assume you meant it. Other than a ketuba case. And now, other than a ketuba case, even if the husband has money, in Arev is not actually committing at all. So, my timer, what's the reason? There's two things here. Mitzvah hu David, as I said before. There's a mitzvah. The person was just trying to get his friend married. It's a mitzvah to get people married. So therefore committed. And lav midi chasam. It's different than a loan. In a loan, the creditor pays money. Okay? And therefore, when someone guarantees that, they guarantee you'll get your money back. With the woman, she never paid any money. The commitment is just in the event of death or divorce, the husband will pay you money, but it was no money off her back. It was not like she gave money and is supposed to get it back. She's getting something not for nothing, but it's part of that commitment. So we don't view that as because he's not causing her a loss at all. Therefore, he didn't really commit to it. Okay, that's the difference between the arev of a ketuba. We're now going to finish with one last case. Amar Rav Huna, which we're only going to start today. Shchiv mira, sheikdish kol nechasav. We have a person on their deathbed. They say, everything of mine is consecrated. Okay, obviously everything is consecrated. However, the amal, but then the person said, manela ploni biyadi. Oh, but by the way, I owe $100 to so and so. So basically, everything is consecrated. Even though I said that, what I really mean is other than this $100, or other than this beautiful silver goblet, or whatever it might be. Ne'eman, this person's believed. Because we assume that people aren't going to trick and deceive the hekdesh, so they must be telling the truth. And they wouldn't try to cheat the hekdesh out of something. Matkefla Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, well, for that, if you're going to say people don't do a knunya on the hekdesh, you would also say, I would assume, that chi adamo se knunya al banav, right? We assume that a person's not going to do a knunya on their sons, and yet if you compare a case of hekdesh to the sons, and you do the exact same case, just plug in sons instead of hekdesh, like this, okay? And Rav and Shmuel say it's not true. It wouldn't come out to the same conclusion. To Rav Shmuel Amar Travayu Shchiv Merash Amar Maneh Leploni Biadi. If you're on your deathbed and you say Maneh Leploni Biadi, I owe someone $100, and you guys, my sons, are not going to inherit that $100. Amar Tnu, if he says and give it to that person, then obviously no tnim. We give it to that person. We take it away from their inheritance. But Amar Lo Amar Tnu, he didn't say and give it to that person. Ein no tnim. We don't give the money. Why? People on their deathbed want to make it look like their sons aren't wealthy because they don't want people to like give an ayin hara to their children. So we view this manela ploni as just a way of saying, I don't own a lot of money. Don't think my kids are wealthy, so you don't give them an ayin hara. But he didn't really mean it. If he meant it, he would say tnu. He didn't say give it to them, then it was just nothing. So we don't take out that maneh, but we do with the hekdesh. Why? Right? Hachanami, wouldn't we say the same thing? Now, with the hekdesh, it's not about his sons, but he doesn't want himself to look wealthy. Maybe he's worried before he dies, people will look at him and give him the ayin hara. So the comparison, we're left with the question. We'll get back to this tomorrow. So we did today. We started with the fact that we don't hold like Rashbag in our Mishnah. And this is one of three cases, and we went through the three cases. We got to the difference between halva'ah and kablanut, what the difference is in the language and what the difference is in the halacha. And then we got to, and again, there were different opinions. We talked about how people's property acts like a guarantor, so therefore you can't go straight to the property, just like you can't go straight to the Arev. And then we talked about these cases with the orphans, and where the Arev paid back the money, and then it flipped into a halva'ah ba'al peh between them. And we said the children don't have to pay back until they get older. And we saw two reasons. We talked about the nafkaminas between them, both the nafkaminas the Gemara gave, and then we had the other case with the Oved Kochavim and how that affected things. And then we talked about Areivut for ketuba and kablanut for ketuba and the different range of opinions there as well about why a ketuba is different and in what way is a ketuba different, and is there no guarantee whatsoever? Is there sometimes a guarantee? And we had that crazy case with the son and the trying to trick the father-in-law, his father, to give them money. And then with that, we finished with this issue of the shliv meirah. We'll get back to that tomorrow. Wishing everyone a good day, and should be proud of yourselves that we're almost at the end of this very, very long Masechet.